So just a word about First Saturday and what this means. I think it was in, forgive me if I get my dates and everything wrong, 1925, Our Lady appeared to Lucia again. She had appeared, of course, in 1917 and with her two cousins with what we call the Fatima apparitions. But then later, I think it was in 1925, she appeared to her and said, I want for you to promote this devotion of First Saturdays, which are meant primarily for reparation to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. That we go and we repair the wounds, the 5 ways that Mary's heart is wounded by different offenses. And forgive me because I don't remember all 5 of those, so I'm not going to get into that. But we do these 5 First Saturdays in reparation to Mary's heart. It's an act of love. And it's not that Mary's just like, oh, I'm so sad that people have been doing these things. No, she knows with her mother's heart that when the world rejects her and rejects Jesus, it's bad for the world, and she cares so much for us. She cares so much for us. She wants us to make reparation. And by our making reparation, we're doing it for the whole world. So what this is it's an act of love. And what is she asking? She's asking for communion on First Saturday, which, of course, back then it wasn't a regular thing for people to go to communion every time they went to Mass. It was only just maybe 25 years earlier that the Pope had really started pushing, regular communion, because sometimes people would go even all year without receiving communion when they went to Mass. They just go that one time during the Easter season, and that's why we have that precept of the Church where we have to go to communion at least once a year during the Easter season, because people weren't going, even though they were going to Mass regularly. And so she was saying, I want you to receive communion on these First Saturdays and to pray 5 decades of the Rosary and to meditate for 15 minutes on the mysteries of the Rosary. And with that meditation over the years, what I've come to see is some people do it in some ways, some in other ways. Some, they go through, in 15 minutes, they go through every single mystery with a very short meditation in their mind. Others, they'll just go through 5 mysteries. One of the things I've come to do is just like I start with one mystery, and I just sit there with Mary, pondering what this means. And then when I feel like, okay, now I can move to the next one, it might be 2 minutes, it might be 5 minutes, it might be 10 minutes, and move on to the next mystery. And believe me, those 15 minutes are done very quickly. But it's not just about, okay, I got to get this done. There's a box I need to check. Mary is inviting us into a deep relationship with her. And we know that Mary is always pointing to Jesus. She's never saying, hey, look at me. I'm wounded, come and give me a hug. She's always saying, I want to bring you to Jesus. We heard this beautifully in the gospel today of other saints who did this. We look at St. John the Baptist. We heard, if you went to Mass yesterday, you heard him say, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sins of the world. Well, the next day, he says the same thing. He says, behold the Lamb of God. 2 of his disciples who are there hear this. They hear, wait, the Lamb of God? What? And they see, behold the Lamb of God. And they leave John to go to Jesus. And I can imagine John wasn't saying, oh, my disciples left me. Huh? Rather, he's saying, yes, they're finally finding that which I've been focusing on this whole time, preparing the way for. They're finding Jesus. And I love this kind of thing. They start to follow Jesus, and Jesus turned and saw them following him. I can imagine him as like one of these, what are you looking for? It could be that. And they're saying, where are you staying? We want to spend time with you. We want to get to know you. That was all John the Baptist was about. Behold the Lamb of God. Now they want to spend time with Jesus. Where are you staying? And he said to them, come and you will see. Or a better translation, come and become one who sees. That when we spend time with Jesus, we become those who can see. See, a lot of times we think seeing is believing. But that's not true. We see a lot of things in our lives and it doesn't lead us to faith. Rather, believing is seeing. Faith is a way of seeing. And when we learn how to see, when we learn how to recognize God's finger in our lives, then we start to see God moving everywhere, right? Doesn't Jesus say this in the Beatitudes? Blessed are the pure of heart, for they shall see God. That when we have that faith, we can start to see what many in the world can't. God's love moving in our midst. So as Jesus says, come and become one who sees. And what's Andrew's first reaction? I got to tell Simon about this. He goes and tells Simon, we've found the Messiah, and he brings him to Jesus. You see, this is what Mary does. She's always pointing us to Jesus. She's always bringing us to Jesus. And so as we celebrate this first Saturday, we're encouraged to get close to Mary, to take some time talking with her, walking with her, making reparation to her heart. How does a mother want reparation to her heart? But just, she wants us to love her. She wants us to love her. And then she draws us in the fastest, surest, safest way to the heart of Jesus.